Okay everyone, welcome back. Now before we get on with the actual little oil study, let's talk about the panel and the surface. This is a 220 by 160 millimeter. Now it's an odd size because it is actually one that I used to have to fit an old Julien Pochard box. I no longer use those, but I still have a number of these old panels made. All I want to do is give the surface a bit of an imprimatur coating. That will allow me to buff this back and then to see my midtones more clearly. Well, certainly not my midtones, but my lights and my darks from the midtones. That's what I meant to say. Okay, so we're ready to do some drawing. Now the board is buffed up nicely. It's got a lovely pinkish warm accent to it. I really quite like that, and it will serve me well as a mid-tone to draw on. For the drawing, I'm going to be using a #1 Rosemary & Company synthetic evergreen brush, one of my favorite types of brush. They're very springy in their bristle. And then I'm going to be using some raw umber, nothing more. I want to keep it quite dry and quite easy to apply the drawing and able to take it off should I decide to do so. Partly wooded but partly in shade area through that middle ground there. It's quite interesting because that's going to give another dynamic to not only the landscape forms but also the contrast, the lights and the darks throughout the whole of this picture. And yeah, I mean, do I want to draw my sky clouds in? Well, I might just sort of hint, a little bit of a hint with where I roughly want them to be in this scene. And there's this lovely cloud that's growing out, and the distance ones here, these little fluffy white clouds that go down towards the horizon, and this one is ascending from the horizon, and you know, up here it's coming up towards where I'm standing, and anything this way is right over my head, so it's well worth looking at that. Okay, so I am mixing the ultramarine blue and the cobalt teal together, and I'm using some titanium white to reduce the amount of punch that the color has got, and just subduing the blues, maybe a little bit more of the cobalt teal in there. It gets very close to being a beautiful color. Now it's going to be tainted, of course it's going to be, because it's going to pick up on some of the oil color underneath the imprimatur. It's going to pick on that, so that's fine. Just see where that looks at the moment. Leave that alone. Now pick up another flat brush, same color, same size, and I'm going to come in with my white values. So I'm going to put in a little bit of white and a little bit of the liquid original, well not the original, the impasto that sits on my palette. And I'm not going to put my highlights in. I'm going to warm it up. I'm going to put a little bit of yellow ochre and a little bit of that blue. I want to subdue the white of the cloud just a little bit, so that when I come in and put my final values in, I have somewhere to put that little bit of highlight in. Get some blue umber mix going on, and let's just gently alter the underlying parts of this cloud form. A little bit lighter. I'm going to put a little bit of yellow ochre to that. And be careful you don't go too mad. If you go too mad, you end up with green. But I think that's quite a nice off blue. Okay, so I've cleaned my brush out again, and now is the time to start looking at our darkest of darks. Now, when you're painting close-up forms, certainly with trees, they are the darkest shadows that you've got, or the darkest marks you're going to have on your painting. And clearly you can see that in the photograph, that these darks are really dark. Now, that isn't helped by the photograph that we're working from, because the camera cannot see the infinite amount of color variances that you would see had you been standing here and painting this scene on the day. You would have seen into those shadows. You would have seen so many more color variants than the photograph will allow you. So you do have to be careful when painting from photographs that you allow for some of those variations in what you see. But we are going to come in, we're going to use some ultramarine blue, we're going to use some umber, we're going to come in with a very dark, we're going to use a little bit of yellow ochre to that, just to suggest the greenness. We're going to come in with some more blue, and that gives us quite a dark green in here. And that just concentrate on that little line of scrub that's running through the valley part of that field. Don't need to do any more than that. It's there, it's done, and we can add or subtract from that later on. What I do want to do is come and use a little bit of that light blue. Now we've got this color of ultramarine blue, umbers, and raw sienna. What I've done with that is added a little bit of our sky color and a touch of quinacridone magenta. I'm going to test that on the color for our hills. Now this is a distant color, distant hill color. It's got a bit of all of this in it with more white, and it's also got some quinacridone magenta. And that is helping me keep a harmony in the overall look of this picture. And I'm using raw sienna, yellow ochre, a little bit of ultramarine blue, tempering it down, and I'm going to come in here with my field color. Now you can see it is severely muted compared to all the colors that are in the photograph. However, some of those will be valid when it comes to putting in highlights and darker tones and lighter tones. I'm just giving this a color. But you can see how much warmer that is to that. And that is in where you need to be thinking when it comes to painting, especially plein air. And the paint is somewhat thicker and it's quite grey up here. But look at how much brighter that little mark is. That is purely white and ochre, not a lot more. But I'm just going to come in and I'm painting with pretty much one stroke if I can. The less you do all of this scrubbing around, then the more you do that, the more you mix your colors up with whatever was underneath, because it's stiffening, but it's not dry by any stretch. So be aware of that. Just put it on, be careful, don't go mad. And now you notice so far in this painting, I haven't once dived into any of my primary reds or any of my primary yellows. I've looked for those colors that are not those at all. So I want to see what blue I'm making there. Now I'm going to come in with a stronger ultramarine blue color, and I want to make that a little bit more of a darker but more beautiful blue in there. a little bit of ochre into that green or into that ultramarine blue, just to give me a different green color. And we may come back in with some of our darks as well. This time I'm going to use a little bit of warm burnt ochre and a little bit of yellow ochre just to warm up my dark. I want to bring that in here. I can see a very warm influence in that. I want to use that in that sort of nice shadow. But I want to see into my shadows. That's the thing. It's what I was trying to say to you about being there on the day and working from your photo. You can see into all these forms so much better if you happen to be standing there, and not so from a photograph that just clumps all those different values together in the image. All right, I just want to come in with a paler, cooler green color. We're going to use our cobalt turquoise. We're going to influence that light color, but we don't want it a strong green, and we don't want it to be ever so punchy. But what I want to do is suggest a few distant fields breaking up some of that distant hillside way up there on those North Downs. Now I'm tempted, I put a little bit more ochre to it, a little bit more white to it, but I am very tempted to add in a little bit of yellow, but I'm resisting at the moment because I think that that would be just a step too far. So I want to put a bit of colour into there and through the back here on the top of that mound, just going up under that part of the tree, and a nice angle here. We're going to bring some greens in a moment with a rigger. We're going to use that, but I just want to get the idea that we've got some nice bright accents of colour through this part of the field. Actually, it does get a lot greener. The grass isn't as burned off as it is up here. So, but got a lot of green in this as well. So let's just look at that. I think what I will do is we're going to come in with a much stronger ochre feel, a little less of the white, and we're just going to go in here and we're going to suggest our cornfield, our stubble field, I think. Lots of little taps, lots of little marks to suggest what I'm trying to convey. Maybe a little bit of warmth up into there, that will be fine. And I do need to use my smaller brush. I've just seen a couple of areas I would like to address with a bit of a greenish colour in through some of these fields. Remember I said in those darks there are some lighter field structures in there, little hedge lines and little hedge rows that break up that scene in that middle distance. Now the thing is that I didn't want it all to be totally dark, but by introducing, albeit just a very soft colour into some of these places, you make your darks that surround them darker still. Quite light up this end of the field, so we can add in just a little bit more white just to put that in, and it is quite cool. And don't forget, white will cool influence down your colors. So if you're using white, be very careful. If you don't want your color to start looking like a cool color, then beware of how much white you actually apply into it, and use another color, which one I don't use often, and that is something like a yellow ochre. Will help you in that, if that's what you seek to do. And this is going to get green as we come this way, so I'm going to bring in some more cobalt teal, and I want to influence that green up into that bank there. But it's a very subtle green. we've got high strong sunshine on it, and a lot of the green tops are just dead thatch more than anything else. But I want to bring in a little bit of more blue. I'm going to bring in a little bit of cad yellow and a little bit of lemon yellow, just to play around with the saturation on these greens here. Even more, I think, more blue. Let's come in with some more ultramarine, a little bit more of the teal, and let's come in with a slightly more exciting green value here, which suggests our grasses. And I think more and more about this. I think that is a wet area at the bottom of the little bank here. So there's lying or standing water in there. Just that little final tap of light in one or two places, breaking up the shapes and making them look more uniformly their own shape within the whole raft of other shapes that are in the scene there. Maybe a little bit of red in my green. You can overdo green too easily, but I think adding a little bit of red into your mix, whatever red you like, it doesn't have to be a bright red. It can be simply a little bit of burnt umber. It could... And come up in here as well, just change one or two bits there. Just break up that silhouette, as it were. A little bit dark through there. Just looking at this one here, just adding just a wee bit more there and there. And then going to come in here with a few darker taps along this field line. And we're almost there. Almost there. Yeah, I can keep going at this. I just am enjoying it so much. That, I think, is pretty much it. We've got our trees, we've got our thing going on, we've got our lovely colours. What I haven't done, just going to amend that, going to bring in a little bit of the residual colours that I've had here, just to suggest the light coming down there a little bit, popping there, and that little bit of a bank that's suggested by those highlights through the back there. Nothing much, don't want to go too mad with that. But I think what we've got is a very, very nice image. We have a lovely landscape, we have our sky, and this would be as a great color study. If you were doing a bigger one, you can use this as a basis to use your colors. You know the colors you've made. They've been made with very few color choices, so they are all related to each other. Many of the blues and the greens have got many of the colors of the sky in, and vice versa. All the hills have got colors of the foreground and background in. So they're all related, and the color choices there are more united as a result of that. And I think that if you wanted to, you can put in a bigger painting of this. You've done the groundwork, you have the color study, you have all that memory, and you have the ability to go on and make a bigger painting. You do not need this to be totally refined and to have every nth degree. Even if I was doing a bigger one, I wouldn't do that. I just like to have a very soft, subtle image here that I relate to. I think it's nice and sort of loose and punchy, and I think it works very, very well. Okay, there you go, everybody. One little color study made and complete. I had a lot of fun doing it, and I do hope you enjoyed the process of me painting it for you. And I'm sure that you got something from it that you yourselves can take on in the future into your own paintings. I think the takeaway from this is to be able to sit down and take a scene, whether it's in here in your studio or whether it's out doing a plein air, but take a small piece of panel with you and paint small pictures as practice pieces, as understanding pieces, as pieces that you can work out all the problems that you may uncover or you may encounter if you were to go into a big painting. And by doing these little color studies first, you rule out many of the issues that may arrive by not doing them. So they are always a great thing to do, is to make a little color study, and it doesn't matter what medium you're doing it in, whether it's a watercolor, pastel, gouache, doesn't matter. We happen to be doing it in oil. But the more you do, the more you will understand. The more muscle memory that you will achieve, the more brain, eye, and hand coordination you will also achieve. And you get so much more fun when you are practicing by doing small pieces. I get a lot of my students to do maybe an A3 paper, and I tell them to quarter it and do little paintings, because when you do a nice one, it's so much more satisfying to you to have achieved something, albeit small, doesn't matter. But it's that little bit of satisfaction, and that gives you much more confidence to move on into the next painting that you're going to do. If you go into a big one and you haven't done that little bit of homework, that little bit of research, that little bit of planning, if it goes wrong, then that can be so soul destroying, especially when you're like halfway into it and it's been days of work and you suddenly realize it's not working. This is getting rid of all the problems that you may encounter. It's also a finish, a much quicker finish, because it's a small panel that you're working on, and it's therefore more satisfying. And as I said just now, it gives you a great deal of confidence to move on with your studies. So yeah, I'm not going to keep lecturing you, but I think that at the end of the day, the more time you can put into sketching, drawing, practicing, and the outcome isn't a key point. If it comes out well, great, fantastic, and really pleasing. If it doesn't, you can bin it without too much worry. But anyway, I think, as I said just now, the takeaway is to practice and to do as much of this as you can. And I'm getting back into it. I used to do it a lot, but I'm trying to get back into doing a daily painting. Now, because of my gallery, because of my workload, I can't do one every day, but I will do one as often as I can. It doesn't have to be an hour painting. It could be a half-hour painting. It could be a 10-minute painting. It could be a 3-hour painting. It doesn't matter. The fact that you're doing it is the principal thing. Do it and you will achieve, and you'll gain experience, knowledge, and confidence. So enough of all that. If you've enjoyed this, please consider giving me a like and a subscription. If you think I've earned your subscription, then please give your subscription. It really helps me and helps my channel grow and reach a much wider audience who, like you, would like to learn to paint. And only by your help, by supporting this channel, will more people get to see the video. So I thank you in advance for that. If, however, you want to even do more and you would like to support the channel in a very small way, you can always give me a super chat, I think they're called, or you can indeed buy me a coffee. Every penny that comes from those sources goes back into the cost of maintaining the channel and keep producing videos for you. And if you want even more, you know what I'm going to say next, is that I've got both of my schools. I'm not going to label them. One is free, one only costs you $15 a month. You get so much from the paid one: full-length videos, a weekly live stream. All the details to both the schools are in the Show More tab and description underneath this and many other videos. So consider it, look at it. If you want to get involved, I'd love to have you on board as one of my latest members to the school. In the meantime, I'm going to let you guys crack on and start practicing. I'm going to get thinking about what I'm going to do next. I'm going to do another little study maybe tomorrow with a bit of luck. So I'll catch you all soon. Take care. Have fun. Stay safe. Enjoy your painting. Bye-bye.